Senator Roy Blunt, you were on the escort committee of Republican leaders last night, so you got a little FaceTime with the president.
Well, I did. I got a chance to visit with the president, and we got a chance to complain about the news media and all sorts of other things.
The one thing you have in common.
That's right. We both figured out if you guys weren't around, we would be solving these problems pretty quickly.
So what did he say and what did you say?
He told me Kentucky, Mitch McConnell was right there before I had a chance to visit with him, and he did mention the Kentucky basketball game. And then we did talk really about the fact that there's so many obstacles to just getting the things done that everybody needs to get done. And one is not necessarily the fact that we have so much news, but there's so much eagerness to get on the news and to talk about things that are never going to happen, to set markers out there that only become obstacles. And there's no question that it's a challenge, Mike.
Now, Senator Blunt, before we plunge into the substance of the State of the Union, backstage you were telling us a little secret about how rank-and-file members know when to stand, when to applaud. Who do you watch?
I thought that was a secret whenever you asked me that. You know, I think generally there's no rule in the chamber, but I think Republicans, if the speaker's a Republican, usually keep an eye on the speaker, and there's no universal rule. I mean, some of the Republicans will be standing up while others aren't, and but
you kind of take your cue
often
from...
kind of taking the cue from, in this case, Mr. Boehner.
Yeah. All right, now, as Senator Blunt and I talk, our mobile polling question for the conversation is going to be right here. Please join us in mobile polling. Senator Blunt, last night the president kept saying, vote, vote, vote. He kept saying he wanted you all to take tough votes. Your thought about that was what?
Well, we're for voting. That's actually been the biggest contention between Republicans and Democrats in the Senate the last 2 years. You know, when we complain about no budget in 4 years, I see lots of people out there with iPads.
They're mobile voting, so you better be good.
Well, and there was no iPad. Nobody had an iPad the last time the Senate passed a budget because iPads hadn't been invented yet. Almost 1,400 days now since the Senate passed a budget. We'd like to have a budget. We'd like to have the appropriations bills. When he's talking about, at least from the Senate perspective, they deserve a vote, he should be looking right at Senator Reid, because he is the one person that can decide, and the only person that can decide to bring a bill to the floor. We want to see bills on the floor. We're prepared to offer amendments and vote on their amendments, and let's see where people stand on these issues. I think that's not a challenge to Republicans nearly as much as it is a challenge to Democrats in the Senate.
Now, Senator Blunt, you said that it sometimes seemed to you as if the president wasn't addressing the people in the chamber. What did you mean by that?
I think the president's view, with evidence in the fact that he basically turned the campaign committee into another kind of campaign committee, a public opinion committee, is, as he said during the campaign, you can't change Washington from Washington. Well, he was right in the middle of Washington last night, but I think that speech was targeted somewhere else. There was not much there to really bring people together in that chamber to get legislation passed. I think that was a continued effort to believe that you can somehow drive Washington by going over the heads of the people that have to cast votes. And frankly, Mike, in the first 4 years, that didn't produce very good results. But it does seem like to me the president's doubling down on that strategy. Maybe that speech was more about who gets elected to the House of Representatives in 2014 than it was what happens in the House of Representatives or the Senate in March of 2013.
Now, Senator Blunt, Missouri is a big defense state, both because of bases and because of contractors. You've been very focused on the sequester. You were just named this week. I think it just became official or announced that you were on the Armed Services
Appropriating Committee.
Appropriating Committee, Subcommittee of Appropriations. What's the outlook for the sequester? What do you hope will happen? What do you think will happen?
Well, we are a big defense state, and I think we're in the top half dozen of defense states. 200,000 people in our state either work for the defense industry, lots of subcontractors, a few big contractors, or actually wear a military uniform. We've got big bases in our state, so it matters where we are. It matters because it's the one thing that most Americans and almost every Missourian believes the federal government for sure should do, is defend the country. But I think, Mike, I think the sequester is going to happen. I'd like to, at the very least, give the Defense Department more capacity to target those cuts if we're going to take those cuts, and it looks like to me that that's going to happen. And we've got to stop. The right thing to do is to reduce spending. The wrong way to do it is to do it with across-the-board cuts as opposed to prioritize and target what needs to happen. You know, another thing I think will happen with the sequester is people, maybe for the first time, as we talk about what you can cut, will realize that more than 60% of the money the federal government spends gets spent on programs that if you meet the definition, you get the money. The things that people think the government does, defend the country, send the food process, the meat plant inspector, the highway engineer, the air traffic controller, all of those things are out of the 40% that, frankly, we borrow every penny for all of that.
And Senator, you're going to be on the ground zero of these discussions because, in addition to being on the Armed Services Subcommittee of Appropriations, you're the ranking member of the Ag Subcommittee on Appropriations, and there's a distinction you hold with, I think, only one other senator.
Well, in this Congress, I'm on the Armed Services Authorizing Committee as well as the Appropriating Committee, and of course that's the key to doing this the right way. Get something authorized and then actually decide that you're going to spend the money and how you're going to spend the money that the Congress decided was a priority. But Mike, if we will do the budget, as I'm now confident we'll do, it may not be an agreed to budget, but the Senate will have a budget, I think, for the first time in 4 years.
The first budget of the iPad
in the
era?
iPad generation, that's right, the iPad era. And if we then will follow what I think will be a strong chairman, Barbara Mikulski, on appropriations and do those dozen appropriations bills, the Senate's going to be pretty busy, and there'll be lots of votes.
By the way, there's a lot of people in this room know Senator Mikulski, people watching. Tell us what you think she's going to be like in that role.
I think she'll be very good. You know, she's a Democrat. I'm a Republican. I consider her a friend. We don't agree on a lot of things, but we find lots of things we do agree on.
What's her style? You think she's going to be effective?
Her style, I think she would not at all object if I said she's tenacious. She wants to get things done. I think she will be more than my friend Harry Reid can handle when it comes to saying, you know, we produce the bills in the committee. That's not been the problem. The problem has been we haven't voted on a single appropriations bill in over a year now. And you can't solve these problems if all you do is say, well, we're just going to continue to do what we did last year. And so having a budget, and I think she'll be as insistent as any member of the Senate could be that we get our bills to the floor, debate them, and in appropriations bills, that generally means they're open for all amendments, and so people have to take a position on what they're for and what they're not for, what they think the government could do. And I thought the president last night cast this new sort of broad line of new things to do, as if we're doing everything we're doing now so well that we can take over programs all over the country for pre-K education, that we can start managing elections. You know, I was a former chief election authority of a state. I got to tell you, this will not be a better process if you get it further and further away from that polling place the president was talking about. I was a university president for 4 years. The federal government running higher education, what a disaster that would be. One reason higher education works so well in this country is it operates itself. It's self-accredited, and if you get loans and grants that are federal government loans and grants, you can use them at any accredited institution. So we've had a minimal involvement government-wise in running the thing that we do better than anybody else in the world, which is higher education. And the president says, we're going to begin to talk about what they should, what it could look like, and what a degree should look like. That is a huge mistake if we go down that road.
Senator Blunt, we're about to get the hook. So penultimate question for you. Yesterday, after holding back, waiting for the hearing to give your opinion, you voted against former Senator Hagel for Defense Secretary. What do you think will happen now in the full Senate?
Well, I don't think we'll move forward for a few days on that, and there's been requests for more information. I think ultimately Senator Hagel will provide that information, and we'll see if it adds any new information to that final decision.
But Senator Blunt, you think there could be a delay beyond this week? That means 10 days. So you're saying that you think that there's enough votes, 40 votes, to delay it?
my belief is there are 40 votes, not to set that as the permanent standard, but 40 votes that says it's too quick to end the debate on this nomination because reasonable things have been asked for that haven't been provided yet.
And so that's news, and you think that eventually will be provided. What still needs to be provided? As you were saying earlier, in your view, there hasn't really been a debate beyond the committee.
There hasn't been a debate beyond the committee, so when you really think about this from what this vote's about, it's not everything. It's supposedly every time you in the Senate talk about ending the debate, that's a filibuster. We haven't started the debate yet. So to have a vote to end the debate before we have the debate doesn't seem to me to give the credit and attention to the Secretary of Defense that the Secretary of Defense deserves. I think because of sequestration, because we're ending 2 wars that have challenged us in a lot of ways, that the next Secretary of Defense is going to have more to say about the military for the next 25 years than any Secretary of Defense. He's going to have a generational impact that no Secretary of Defense has had probably since Reagan was president.
And Senator Blunt, as we say goodbye, one thing that you do on the road, one thing you're big on with that iPad is Scrabble. Tell us your most valuable Scrabble word.
Most valuable.
Or what's a favorite Scrabble word?
The great Scrabble word is QI, the essence of all things, and particularly if you put that Q on a triple letter.
I guess you can't use Qualcomm in Scrabble, but...
Qualcomm, that was my word.
Now, do you tend to beat your staff, or do they beat you in Scrabble?
Well, I think they might let me win. I'm not sure, because they're all really smart.
Senator Blunt, thank you for a great conversation.
Thank
On a
you
busy
all.
morning.